Hello, my name is Eric Putkonen. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm talking about being versus doing. In non-dual philosophy, regardless of tradition, be it Advaita Vedanta, Buddhism, you name it, one of the primary fundamentals is it's about being versus doing. I've pointed to the ceasing to do, try to give up this doing, because you can't do something to be. You try to do something to become, and so you get other substantiating and other substantiating phrases and pointers along the same direction of it's about being, not doing, because you can't become what you already are fundamentally, and so there's no way to practice being. There's no doing that will get you to being. Doing gets in the way of being. Because as long as you're doing, you're trying to change what's going on, which is not being now. Being is always in the moment. It's in the now, the infinitesimally small moment that, of the moment. That is where being resides. And if you're trying to change it, if you're trying to get somewhere else, then you're practicing. You're trying to become. You're trying to do. And that falls short from realizing what already is and just being that. And so that's where practice falls short, because you can't practice your way into being. You can't do your way into being. Doing gets in the way because, again, you're always trying to get somewhere else, and you're avoiding the being of now, this very moment. And so in trying to point at this, you'll hear things like just rest as awareness. Rest as awareness is a pointer to being. Abide as silence also is, abiding as silence is a pointing to being. Because when you're abiding as silence or rest as awareness, you're not doing anything. Silence does not arise because of anything we do. And awareness isn't there because of anything we do. We don't choose to be aware. We don't choose to be aware. I mean, simply, as long as we are conscious and our eyes are open and the eyes function, we see. And when you see, you have no choice to not see. Just like you have no choice to not hear if the ears are functioning and you're awake and conscious. That awareness is automatic. It's part of being. When you're being, you're aware. To be is to be aware. And so, if a bird chirps or a squirrel chucks or whatever happens in the background, you hear it. You have no choice but to hear it. You don't have to try to hear it. It just happens naturally. And this is where Zen Master Bunke would talk about the unborn mind. You may be attending to listen to me and hear what I'm saying. And so you're consciously aware and focused here. But if a dog barks or a bird chirps or something happens in the background, without intending to hear, you still hear. It's just a natural arising of the unborn mind, he would say. And that's all part of being. In this being, there is this choiceless awareness. And so when you rest as awareness, you're just being this choiceless awareness. If you are abiding as silence, again, there's nothing you can do to cause silence. You can only cease doing. Then the only thing that's left is being. The doings that may normally distract from being have ceased, and in this silence, all that's left is being, choicelessly. And so although me and many others talk a great deal about various things. The basics, the fundamental, that should not be forgotten, is it's about being. So you can't become, you can't do your way to being. There's nothing, about this. To try to accord is to deviate. It is impossible to progress in becoming a being. You already are being. You just have to realize what's already the case and just be that. And so you're just being, resting in being, or abiding as being, or abiding in being. Language is inaccurate. There's flaws due to the dualistic nature of language. And words are vague. And so it might be described as abiding in being, abiding as being, just being, resting as awareness, abiding as silence, abiding in silence. All these phrases are pointing at just being. It is this fundamental, not trying to do, not trying to change, not trying to manipulate, not identifying. This is why one of the primary practices, and the thing I recommend most, is just being still, being silent, being fully aware, not even thinking. And of course, this is just another descriptor of abiding as awareness or resting in being. It's the same thing. You could even call it meditation. There's a bunch of phrases for it, but this is the fundamental idea, is if you are just being still, silent, fully aware, you're not doing, all that's left is choiceless being, and without the distractions of doing, like thought, action, things like that, it might become, you might become aware. There might be some kind of recognition, an intuitive, oh, this is being. Not that being or awareness ever truly becomes an object of itself. You never really become aware of awareness. You become aware of a mental concept, a reflection in the mind, but it is fundamentally always that which is aware is seeing. It never becomes an object of the seeing. And even though I've sometimes told people, instead of trying to be aware of aware, just be aware of or abide as existing, as being. And when you try to be aware of your own being existence, it's not particularly easy to turn on itself like that. Because again, it doesn't become really an object. It can become a concept, and then it can look like an object, but that's really not it either. I mean, fundamentally, it's the I trying to see itself. And the I never sees itself. The closest it might get is looking into a mirror, but what it's still seeing is only a reflection, and it's seeing the mirror. It never is seeing itself. The I simply cannot see itself, ever. But when it is ceasing to try to objectify, to find the object, when it is ceasing to do, when it is trying to do something volitionally, instead of, if it just sits back unconditionally, in an unconditional being, so to speak, there is awareness, there is seeing. The I knows itself because it's seeing. It doesn't see itself, but the very fact of seeing is to know itself. And so the I sees. And then if you try to turn the awareness back onto itself, like you're trying to see the seeing. You really never see anything there. But there is a recognition that the seeing itself is the I. To know the I is the seeing. And so to know the self, to realize the self, is just being. And again, we've come back to, it's just being. This is the fundamental, most basic of basics when it comes to Advaita and non-duality in general, is it's being, not doing. To do means you haven't got it yet, and you're trying to fake it, or you're trying to self-hypnotize and convince yourself otherwise, or whatever you do. Any attempt to do is to lose it. Being is either known or it is not. And how can you deny being? You know you are. You just don't know what it is because it's not an object. It's not something you can go, oh yeah, here's the parameters, here's the border. Oh, I know exactly what it is. That never happens. You can't deny your own existence though. There is existing, there is being. But what is that? Don't know. But it can't be denied. Being, existing, just is. Without trying to do anything. You can't do anything to exist. Because you already exist, and you know it. And so this is an important fundamental. And I find it's something to use as a guide because we like distracting ourselves with doing, with becoming. And we think that if we do enough, we can become it. That is impossible. The very fact of, like I said, doing is to lose it. There's only being it already, now. That's the self. You are it. You know you are. There is existing. There is awareness. It's choiceless. It's already there. It's so close you can't miss it. It's just you can't objectify it, define it, conceptualize it, and say, oh, now I know it. Know it as an object. You only know it because you are it as existing, as a being, as awareness. And so always kind of keep that in the back of your head, that perhaps in my spiritual, seeking, in my spiritual practices, perhaps I'm doing too much. And I'm forgetting about being. Because the whole point is to be, not to do. And so it might be worth dialing back the doing and focus on being, just being. And if there's a moment where you're alone and it's maybe quiet in the room, just sit, be still, be silent, be fully aware. Just being. Just being. That's all you got to do. No more, no less. You don't need to become. You don't need to change. It's choiceless. As soon as you try to choose something else, you're losing it. Don't try to choose, don't manipulate, don't do. Just be. Silent, still, fully aware. Being. Being regularly. Anyways, if you got any questions, comments, please post below. But until next time, thank you much.